This show is founded upon Lakota Star Knowledge concepts, and in learning these concepts, you have to begin with the basic one, which is reality begins within. And this is uh, how the universe and all universes were created. Yeah. So when you're looking at your life and your reality to influence that so that it's healthy and that you're able to um, enjoy your life as well as learn from experiences in your life, the best foundation to have is to go within yourself and establish peace in your life. And this requires taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally because those four parts are connected to each other. And where they connect is deep inside of you, and this is your sacred center. There, in your sacred center, is no culture, there is no uh, language, there's no uh, race or anything like that. This is your sacred area, and sacredness does not have skin color or race. Okay, everything has this in its natural creation state. Okay, and this is where there's some sacred pieces inside of you that are also dwelling in your sacred center. So one of them comes from the earth. Yeah. So when you're living this healthy way, you're really in tune with the earth. Yeah. And this is vital because we need the earth. Yeah. We need her for everything. The air that we breathe, the food that we eat, the water that we drink, all these things, the warmth from the sun, all of this is is like related. Yeah, it's all connected, and the this is so important. So when we're living this way, we're nurturing our connection in all of this, and we're playing a role um, in which we are communicating healthy to one another, and everything inside is being nurtured too. Yeah, everything inside of us is being nurtured. When we live this way, we're nurturing all the connections inside of us, everything. Yeah, our bodies, our minds, our emotions, our soul. Uh, we're nurturing all that connection, and then all the parts that makes that those parts up too. We're nurturing all of that. Like your physical body, you have so many components in your physical body. Yeah, that we're nurturing those connections, and even those each of those parts are consisted of things, and we're nurturing all of that too as we live this healthy way. Yeah, and this is the road to life. Yeah, and one of the things that is interesting in life on this planet is that most plants bleed red. All animals and humans bleed red. And so red represents life. So when you hear the term the red road, this is talking about the road to life. Red does not represent Indians. In our medicine wheel, there's four colors in there, beginning with black, then white, then yellow, then red. So when we're living this healthy way, this is we're walking that road of life, which is the red road. Okay. Now those four colors in the medicine wheel, they just represent directions, and they may represent other things too, but they do not represent skin color. Let me say it like this: the only yellow skinned people I've ever seen in my life are people who have hepatitis or some kind of disease involving what is it, the kidney failing or something like that, and The Simpsons. Those are the only yellow-skinned people I've ever seen. Living in the city of Berlin, this is a world city. It's a cosmopolitan city. And when I first moved here, I I had to learn German, and I in my German language class, there were people from Korea, Japan, Taiwan. There was another girl too from where was she from? Malaysia, I think she was from. These are all Asian girls, and when you look at them sitting together, none of them were yellow. Huh? Not one of them were yellow. Yellow does not represent Asian peoples. If you really think about it, there's a part of Indian uh, what constitutes us Indians today. A part of that is Asian. That's a bona fide fact. Yeah, we're not completely from Asia, but we're a mixture, and some tribes have it more than others. So when you look at some tribes, like from the southwest down to the western areas of South America and the Central America, stay on the west side, and you see a lot of Asian influence there, and they really have narrow eyes, and there's short people and so forth. Yeah, but other parts of the North American continent are not like that. So not all Indians have that, but a lot of us do. Okay, and so if you want to say that yellow represents the Asians, that's going to include some Indians. So be careful about that. Yeah. So that's a city modern thinking that is using that medicine wheel to represent races of people. Yeah, because that concept doesn't even come from Indians at all. That comes from Western society. And you hear songs like what's that one called? It's a children's Christian song, Jesus Loves. How does that go? How does that go? Jesus loves the little children, all the little children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in His sight. Yeah, I still remember that. See, things like that. That's not coming from the Indian world. That's obviously coming from the Western world. So, Indians who are saying that the four colors represent the four races, they're being influenced by the Western world. That's not traditional knowledge at all. Lakota Star knowledge does not say anything about skin color. Because the reason why is because it's not important. What's important is inside. That's why I'm talking about this. Reality begins within. Yeah? So again, medicine wheel, the four colors do not represent races. They represent other things, but not skin color. Lakota Star Knowledge teaches that when humans appear on the earth, they appear in 5 areas, and at that time there's only one continent. In time, these 5 groups begin to intermingle with each other, and it shows that all babies speak the same language all over the world. And as they start to organize into communities and they start to, spread out on the land, some of them move, southwardly. Some of them move more to the north. And those that live in locations that are closer to the sun, their skin gets darker. Those that move more to areas that are away from the sun, their skin got lighter. And eye colors changed and hair textures changed. To see the people's bodies had to adapt to the environment that they're living in. And part of that adaptation process involved the development of skin color. I mean, even in the Indian world, you look at the Indians from the Southwest and Mexico, man, them guys are really dark. Yeah, they're almost black. In fact, in some cases, they're blacker than black people. A lot of people don't realize that. That's not red. Yeah? And then when you go further north, the skin color gets lighter. It's because the distance from the sun is greater. Yeah? So this is skin color is not represented by the medicine wheel. Okay? Very important to keep that in mind. So, And at that time, that people spread across the continent. They what today is north and south at that time was east and west. Yeah, and then the people, so they were living this way. What I'm telling you, taking care of their four parts of their self, and learning from difficulty. Whenever difficulty came in their life, they learned that difficulty is part of life because nature is this way. We To survive, we have to observe nature because nature is telling us, okay, what foods to eat and things like that, and also the plants and animals, something happens to them just right before when the seasons change or when the weather changes, and we by observing that, then when we see those changes, then we know we have to adapt too. So we have to gather supplies or whatever for that weather that's coming that might be difficult. See, we learn all of that by observing nature, and so that means that to do that we have to live in a healthy way. Like I said, taking care of the four parts of yourself, so you can hear what the earth is saying. Yeah, and then the people were learning that in nature difficulty happens sometimes just out of the blue. Sometimes it happens because of what somebody does, or it just happens out of the blue. But the same thing for good things. Sometimes good things happen because of what somebody did, or it just happens out of the blue. We learn that from nature. So we learn that that's how it is in our lives too. That sometimes difficulties come to us because of what somebody did, or it's just out of the blue. But the important thing is that we learn from it, that we examine it, and whatever emotion it brings, that we express it without hurting anybody or anything, including ourselves. And then we start learning from it. We start making the most out of the situation that we can. As soon as we start thinking like that and doing that, those emotions leave and peace comes in. Now, that process means that we develop emotionally and we develop spiritually. But we have to develop emotionally first before we can develop spiritually. So that's how our ancestors lived. Now, this is how we establish peace in our lives. And peace is not happiness, okay? Peace is peace. It just is. Happiness is an emotion. And that comes from blessing. Yeah? So there's going to be times when we're going to be angry and scared and sad and happy. And that's all part of life. Now, what some people, in time, some people, they only want to, feel one emotion. They don't want to feel the others, so they avoid the others. And whenever something happens to them, if it makes them feel angry or sad or scared, they avoid those kind of experiences and only want to feel happy. And they want to stay like that all the time, so they'll force themselves to do that. And they develop this. They become addicted to it, and they start developing weird characteristics and habits in which they force themselves to only feel that one emotion. They'll do anything to feel that emotion. It's just like a drug addict that needs his drug. In fact, this is the same process where substance addiction comes from. It comes from because something happened to them and they're trying to avoid facing that issue. Yeah? So people who do this, they try to forget. They don't want to think of this difficulty. So they try to forget it. And maybe after 10 years, they have forgotten, but it's still there. The body never forgets. So the body will begin to shut down. It's going to start to get sick. This is a sign for that person. Hey, you better look into that, because if you don't, eventually you're going to die. You're going to develop some kind of psychosomatic illness, And the only cure is to look into it. The drug is not going to cure it. It's just going to slow your death down. That's all. But it's not going to cure it. Yeah? So that's why it's important to not deny difficulty, but to learn it, and then you realize it's not a bad thing, because a difficulty is just something that's in the middle of happening, and it needs you to finish it. Yeah, and when you do, the emotions are gone; they leave, and you develop emotionally. But like I said, there are some people who don't want to do that. They only want to feel one emotion, and they push away the others. Yeah. So then the next thing they do is they start, even when they encounter something, they look at it and they only want, they only choose the things that appeal to them and their addiction to that one emotion, and they call that good. Anything else, they call it bad. They separate things and label things like this. So they see life in two ways. That's duality. This is unhealthy, because, like I said, it involves emotional denial. It involves, not learning from difficulty, and people who do this, they create really complex belief systems, and everything is about doing something or singing some kind of song or having some kind of object and saying this is what is protecting you, and that develops into religion, and to have a perfect being that is supposed to be behind all of this, and that as long as you live this way, then your soul goes to a perfect place where you're always happy, yeah, and so this is all a dualistic creation. This is the creation of man, and everything that fits into this good and bad concept, that's created by man. So God, Satan, demons, angels, all of that is a man-made idea. This is not natural. Yeah. So those kind of people, they're called dualistic, and because they only see things in two, this and that. One of them they choose to be good, and the other one they reject and try to destroy, and that's what they call evil. So look at all the religions around the world that do that. Right now, the focus is on these radical Muslim extremists, yeah. But Christians have done worse things than what the Muslims are doing today. Yeah, Christians have wiped out millions of people in North and South America. They saw the Indians as animals, that you could do anything you wanted with them. So it's funny because they consider them animals, but yet they raped them. Yeah, eradicated entire nations with sexual diseases, skinning them and making jackets and bags and hats out of Indian skin. Saying this is, and they use this as a really exotic, boutique kind of gifts. So only the super rich in Europe have these. Yeah? And this is all done in the name of their God. And then you look at things like the Spanish Inquisition, where the Catholic Church was going around Europe, and anybody who was supposed to be a witch, they would say, okay, we're going to put you to this test. We're gonna put you underwater, hold you there for a long time. If you come up alive, that means you're a witch. If you die, your soul automatically goes to heaven. Either way, you die. What kind of a test is that? You're set to fail. And that's how the Catholics terrorized Europe. Then that moves into early America, in Salem, Massachusetts. They did the same thing there too. And then all these different religions pop up, and everybody's saying theirs is the true religion, and everybody is saying if you don't agree with us, you're going to hell. See, it's always just two options with these kind of thinking people. If you're not with me, then you're against me. If you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Those are all dualistic statements, and they're not true. Absolutely not. They violate nature, because nature is not this way. From nature, we learn that there are at least three perspectives to everything. And it's not about what's good and bad. It's about, is this something I can learn from? Or is this something to enjoy? Or is this something that affirms my peace? Or is it just nothing? You take the time to check it out. Healthy people take the time to check it out because that's what they've done to their own lives. When you take care of yourself, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and establish peace by learning from your difficulties from the past. And that helps you to enjoy blessings even more, and it helps you to remember good times that you forgot from your past, and that prepares you for what's coming down the road. If it's a difficulty, you're ready for it. You don't see it as a bad thing anymore. You see it as something that just needs to be completed, and that'll lead to a blessing. And also good things are coming your way. So when you're living in this healthy way, you're ready for that. And it keeps you in the present moment. And when you live in the present moment, that influences your future in a healthy way. This is healthy living. These are all based on star knowledge concepts. That you have to understand the universe inside of you before you can understand the universe around you. Because reality begins within. So in this way, you're getting to know yourself. So when you encounter something new for the first time, you take the time to check it out. So healthy people look for at least three perspectives, because sometimes something might have four perspectives, sometimes it might have more, but it's always going to be at least three. So for dualistic people, it's this and that, and then they choose one and reject the other. Okay? So if Lakota Star Knowledge says that there's at least three perspectives to everything, that means each piece is 33%, with one being 34 to make the 100%. Yeah? So dualistic people will choose only one and reject the rest, which means they only accept 33% of reality and they reject 67%. People who follow star knowledge concepts look at the whole thing and try to learn from it as much as they can. So you see how in dualistic ideologies, they're very thick-headed, close-minded. And they set themselves up as authorities. And they want to tell you what's right and what's wrong. See, they don't want you to check things out. They don't want you to establish peace in your life. They don't want you to go within yourself. They want you to be under them. They want to control you. And they'll do what they can to accomplish that. They'll deprive you of things by saying, okay, our church rules say you can't drink that, or you can't eat that. See, that's designed to see if you'll do it or not. If you'll follow it, if you do follow it, that they know they can control you. So now they can say other things to control you. And then they'll say, this is what God has said. And it's all designed to control others. In other words, it's designed to oppress. Yeah? Dualism, when you follow dualism, you're oppressing yourself. And then when you follow a dualistic religion, yeah, you're being oppressed. And then if anybody disagrees with you, you turn around and oppress others. This is where abusive relationships develop. Abusive relationships have their root in duality. And when people are avoiding emotions and only wanting to feel one, they lose their self-esteem. They lose their self-worth. They develop emotional insecurities because they're not developing emotionally. And then they have inferiority complexes. When somebody's like this, they're either going to be an abuser or a victim or both. It depends on the situation. But it's unhealthy. Yeah. So again, dualistic people, they see life as this and that, and then they only choose one. The one they choose is 33%. The other one is 67%. The one they reject is 67%. That's 3. Yeah. They combine 2 in one group and choose the remaining one. Yeah. Lakota Star Knowledge says there's at least 3. So for us, it's this, that, and the other. And sometimes there's more than one other. And it's not about which one is good. It's about what can I learn from this. Or maybe it's something that I enjoy. Maybe it's something that just affirms peace. Maybe it's nothing. But you take the time to check it out. This is the foundation of healthy living. Yeah, it begins by going within yourself because reality begins within. Inside of you is a universe. So before you can be at peace and explore the universe around you, you've got to establish peace inside of you, the universe inside of you. Because reality begins within. That's the foundation of this show. Living in a healthy way. That's the way of the ancestors, yeah? Living in a healthy way. And learning from difficulty. If you make a mistake, don't worry. The world is not over yet. Yeah? You cannot destroy the earth. She's a living being that cannot be destroyed. We need her. She doesn't need us. Anyway, so the world is going to be here. Don't worry. Like I said, make the best of that. Learn from it as much as you can. Express the emotions first and then start learning from it. And it'll lead to other things that are going to be really nice. Okay? It can lead to something wonderful. So don't worry. Back in the late 1800s, when we were placed on reservations, they were prison camps in the beginning. And this is a situation where we couldn't leave. We were not allowed to hunt. Our knives and guns were taken from us. And we were only allowed to eat whatever the American government gave to us, which was really no good food. The quality of the food was okay when it left places like Chicago and stuff like that. But once it got to, some of these train stations between there and the reservation, a lot of these handlers would sell it. And then they would buy old food and put that in there instead, and these middlemen would make a lot of money. Yeah? So what we got on a reservation was bullshit food. Yeah, it was really no good. And we ended up getting all kinds of diseases like heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And then at the same time, our language and ceremonies were declared illegal by the United States. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Soon after that, our minds became weak. And these, as I said earlier, these are the 4 parts of the self. So with the 4 parts of the self being sick, we lost our connection to our sacred center. So we started to focus on communicating away from that. And then the priests came from the various churches, and they learned our ways and said that since our ways conflict with the Bible, that our ways are evil, that they come from Satan. They come from the devil. So in our weakened states, we slowly began to accept that. Now, another thing is that there were some Lakota people that didn't want to accept that. They wanted to hang on to the traditional Lakota Star Knowledge ways. And if they revolted, they were sent to a mental hospital in Canton, South Dakota, which was set up for all reluctant Indians in America that did not want to become Christianized. They were sent there. And these church priests also committed the medicine women, holy women. They committed all of them to these mental asylums too. This way, the people would not go to them for help, that they would come to the churches. They wanted the Indian people to only go to the priests and not their traditional healers. So they sent the healers to this mental asylum to die. And if you are radical, you were sent there to die too. Yeah. So while this is happening, the priests are saying to the Indian people, if you believe our way, we will help your children. And so, there was a very, very dire straits time. And so a lot of Indians became Christians because of that. Like I said, we were weak-minded too at that point. And those who stuck it out, there were people who refused to accept Christianity, but they went to church anyway. What they were doing was they were putting up a candy store front. On the outside, they were acting like good little Christian Indians, but on the inside they weren't. They were Star Knowledge people. Yeah? They did this because they didn't want to get sent to that mental asylum to die. That's sad, isn't it? But that's part of what happened back then. And it's because of these people who maintained this knowledge in secret. Thanks to them, they passed it down, to certain people like me, and we still have this knowledge. And I have this show, and I'm sharing it with you. Because this regards the sacred center. And we all have that. Yeah, this is not a Lakota thing. This is a Ikje Oyate thing. Ikje Oyate means human being. When you live this way, as I said in the beginning, you communicate as a human, not as a Lakota, not as a German or a Japanese or an African. You communicate as a human. Yeah? That's really important to know. So, that's how it was back then. Yeah? Now remember I said that the priest said to the Indians, we will help your children. So, they took the children away from the parents, sent them to boarding school hundreds of miles away, where these children were tortured to speak only English and learn the civilized Christian way. If they spoke about home, they were tortured. These schools didn't do background checks in those days. Yeah, the pay was really low, so they got really no good teachers in these schools. A lot of these teachers were sadistic. They got sexual pleasure from torturing people. And here, this is like summer holiday camp for them. And the same thing for perverts. A lot of perverts now have their pick of the litter. And they could get away with it. That's what happened. A lot of these children were murdered. They were killed. They were raped. They were molested. And there's a lot of unmarked graves near these schools. Not all of these children are accounted for. So, those who made it through, what they learned was whatever they saw. Because a lot of these children never went back home. They were told by the priests that their families had died and that there was nobody there. And that broke their hearts. This is why some of these children, they were so sad they couldn't eat. And they ended up starving themselves to death. And those who made it through, like I said, they didn't really survive because They were not able to process all these emotional traumas that they experienced. They didn't know how, because the only adults that were around them were these unhealthy, abusive people, teachers, dorm matrons, cooks, janitors, priests. They were all unhealthy to them. That's all they knew. They learned how to become victims, and they learned how to become abusers to those who they considered weaker than themselves. So they didn't really survive. A lot of these children that made it through these schools, they had a lot of traumas that they didn't know how to deal with, because all they saw was abuse. That's what they learned. There was no adult healthy role models to emulate. I remember I said these children were told that their families were all dead, so they didn't go back during summer holiday. They just stayed at these schools and worked. So when they left these schools, they tried to live in mainstream America. Nobody accepted them. They would say, you're a heathen. You're a dirty Indian. So they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation. And when they went back to the reservation, to their people, they ran into more problems. Many, many times they were not even accepted by their own people, because their own people were saying, you're too white. You act like a white man. So they're caught in between. So a lot of them turned to alcohol to try to hide all of it, to try to forget everything. They turned to alcohol, and then later drugs. There were some who tried to make it. They married each other because they knew each other went through the same thing. And they didn't want their children to go through what they went through. So they didn't teach them the language. They didn't teach them the culture. Those children, the children of these first generation boarding school people, those children are today's elders. When they were born, they didn't learn the language. They didn't learn Lakota Star knowledge. They never got the opportunity to. When you look at an old person on the reservation today, they're not the connection to the ancient past. No, they were born in a Christian background at a time when the reservations were strongly Christian. So this is what happened. That's a native experience that a lot of people don't realize. This is what happened all over America and Canada too. So the next generation, they are sent to boarding school too. No choice. It's a little bit better, but they're still abused. They're still getting treated really no good. And so they grow up, have children, and they don't teach their children anything. What can they teach them? They don't know anything concerning their own language. This is why today most people cannot speak their own language, and what little cultural information they know is Christianized, meaning it's dualistic, and it's not the original ancient form. Okay, so the first generation of Indian kids that were sent to boarding school, since all around them were unhealthy adults who did nothing but abuse them, they didn't receive healthy parenting. They missed things that they should have learned about life. So they're lacking emotional development. So when they grow up, and those who make it through these boarding schools, and then they have children, those children are also lacking that emotional support, that emotional development, because the parents don't know how to do it. Yeah? All they knew and all they learned was abuse. All they experienced in these schools was abuse. So they have a hard time trying to be a healthy parent. So they do the best that they can. But the children still are not receiving the proper emotional development, the experiences that healthy children should receive from healthy parents. They're still missing that. And so when that second generation grows up, they know even less concerning healthy parenting. And so their children receive even less. And every time this happens, the next generation becomes more dualistic than the previous one. So let me try to say that again. The first generation boarding school kids, they didn't receive proper parenting skills. So when they have children, their children are not receiving healthy training that they should be receiving. They're receiving even less than their parents. Now that second generation, when they grow up, see, they know even less. So when they have children, those children are receiving even less, and it gets worse with each generation, which also means that the less healthy emotional development they receive, the more dualistic they become. So with each generation is more becoming emotionally underdeveloped, they're also becoming more dualistic. So today, it's a huge mess on the reservation. As a whole, we're incredibly underdeveloped emotionally, and we are incredibly dualistic. We're quick to attack each other. We're quick to pull each other down. We're just like the rest of the civilized, dualistic world. Notice I didn't say white man, because this is all over the world. It's not just among white countries. It's all over the world. Wherever there is a dualistic ideology, where one gender is considered less than and property of the other gender, you're going to have incredibly underdeveloped emotional people, which equals incredibly dualistic people. And that is unhealthy. So that started by the time of the late 1800s on the reservation.